So the importance of research and development in the AI age. And I'm delighted to introduce on the panel today, we have Matt from the International Baccalaureate, Lucy Gonzalez from the Strategic Programme Director from Cambridge University Press and Assessment, Dan Green from Policy Director at the Federation of Awarding Bodies, and Dr Rebecca Conway, Director of Research and Innovation, the Northern Council for Further Education. I'm Andrew Lapham. I'm a digital Chief Officer at Searchlight Consulting, background in retail, actually, so I'm a little bit of a fraud, have been a visiting lecturer, and I'm delighted to say I've got a Master's in Innovation and Creativity, so it gives me some credentials to be here. Delighted to be here, and what we're going to do is we're going to dive a little bit deeper into, okay, we've got AI, we know it's coming, we need to have a good look at it and say, okay, what's the best way to adopt it, and when, and how. So if we start off, we've got a few questions which we've prepared. So I start off, the first one we've got is, what are the biggest challenges awarding organisations currently face where AI might have a role? And Rebecca, if I could start with you.
Yeah, sure. So I thought it'd be useful today in this session, obviously thinking before the panel, to think about the here and now. I think we've had quite a lot of interesting future-gazing moments, but I think for AOs and the here and now, I'm sure many colleagues, there's lots of colleagues in the audience today who would agree with me on this. The big challenges that we have are about like the huge volumes of information that we need to produce with a high degree of technical accuracy in quite a short amount of time. So those of us working on vocational and technical qualifications, policy change is just so rapid. We're asked to do more and more in less and less time. So for me, that feels like the kind of number one nut to crack. You know, can we improve the efficiency of what we're doing? Can we use AI to help us reduce some of those manual stages and reduce the amount of time that the production of this material takes?
So hoping getting productivity, but also accuracy.
Gains.
Yeah, marginal gains. Marginal gains. Very good. Any other challenges? Matt? Yeah, Matt, would you like?
For me, it's really quality. Mm-hmm. We've got excellent human beings, but human beings do make mistakes, and so the awarding bodies know how frustrating it is when that typo sneaks through, or when an examiner writes a comment that you really wish they hadn't done. And I think AI can really help us do some of those double checking that we can't do using humans. So that's checking of marking to identify the scripts that perhaps require a second look, and also checking some of those sort of teacher examiner comments, or running through spotting typos and things which we know get through from the current processes.
Right. So the challenge of getting some sort of backup.
Exactly.
Human first, but getting backup, getting machine second. Okay. Dan?
I'm going to completely agree with what's been said so far, but I think when sort of employers talk about what they want within, again, technical vocational education, they talk about sort of speed, agility, short courses delivered on a flexible basis, and I think AI can help with speeding up some of those development processes to enable that agility as well.
Excellent. Lucy?
I just want to see AI make things better for people. So, removing the things that are tedious, that are repetitive, and allowing them to focus on the things where they really add value. So my pet topic is human marking. I would rather see the humans do the thing that they do best, which is really engage with what the students have produced, as opposed to checking if a box has been ticked, or if there's the right amount of words in an answer, that type of thing.
Yeah, I really agree with that, Lucy. I think it's about using people more effectively, isn't it, in the way that AI can be an enabler.
Yeah. We were talking at lunch about consistency of marking. That's a big piece, isn't it? Everyone can mark differently, right? So any thoughts on that? Do you think that AI can help us with perhaps consistency?
I mean, fundamentally, I think it comes back to that process of having a second review of the work, so that if a human marker says it's 15 and the AI says it's 15, you've got that confidence that you can glue those things together. Whereas if you've got an AI saying it's 15 and the human marker saying it's 10 or 20, maybe that human marker's a little bit tired. It was the end of the day after a hard day's work when they did that marking. So that's where you can pop back. And the other bit I want to add is, yes, absolutely, we can use technology, but coming back to the speech earlier today, it doesn't necessarily have to be AI to do that, but there are other technological solutions that can do some of that checking, which
Yes.
might be more energy efficient, because
Yeah.
use AI for where it really adds the value.
Yeah, I think that the terms or the words artificial intelligence carry a lot, right?
Yeah.
Very often I make the example that it's like saying vehicles. When you say vehicle, you could be talking about a plane or a ship or a bike. And if you're not specific about what you're talking about, then it gets conflated these days, usually with Gen AI, which is probably the thing that I would use the least, that I would trust the least. But automation is one of the things. We have been using automated ways of marking. We call it, at CUPA, we call it auto marking, because it's automated marking, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're giving it to a chatbot, actually, over my dead body, but we're giving it to a chatbot. But yeah, being specific and not just referring to AI, but being specific, I think is important.
I think there's another sort of interesting use in terms of standardization for markers and assessors as well. So I think I was reading on the train down, Standards and Testing Agency for Key Stage 2 writing assessments has started using AI-generated scripts for moderator training. And one of our members has works with apprenticeships, has developed AI learners in order to train their assessors for conducting sort of live observations as well. So it's quite...
Very good. Another angle to it. So if we look at the challenges, we now turn to what is the problem we're trying to solve? Because this is the classic, isn't it? And, AI's got a lot of hype, but how do you decide which problem to point AI at? Any thoughts?
So I really like adaptive assessment. I think that often, particularly in the sort of classical exam setting, you have a bunch of questions that are too easy for the student and they're going to lose marks. The bunch that actually are designed for them and the bunch at the end that are really too hard. So 2/3 of the exam isn't really giving the student the best opportunity. So can we use AI to focus more on those elements? We can do that with auto marking a bit, but current auto marking tends to be multiple choice, tends to be much shorter answers, which perhaps aren't the best kind of questions to really help focus down. If you're a teacher trying to understand a student, you wouldn't ask them 5 multiple choice questions, you'd ask them a probing question to understand. So I think that's one of the big opportunities. The other is in giving students an equal experience. So oral exams at the moment, you can get a lot of variation in the way in which usually the teacher approaches that examination, despite all of our things. What if we could get the AI to do that so everybody had exactly the same experience? And with that, we can then start valuing and assessing other things like collaboration, where we can't currently do that because different experiences. With AI, everyone have the same experience and interactive, and that's where I think there's a real opportunity here.
So possibly where there's gaps today, things we can't measure, can't assess, therefore maybe there's something there very interesting. Any other thoughts?
I think from our perspective at NCFE, what we do is we've got an AI business partner service. So it's someone in my team, and they go out to every team and they understand what the operational challenges are that people are facing. They'll come up with solutions using AI, sometimes with automation actually as well. And then they'll do a short trial of just a few weeks, and they'll see if that's working. If it's not working, we'll move on to something else. And by working, I mean, is it bringing efficiencies? Is it bringing financial savings? And again, I thought it was really fascinating in Rita's talk this morning, actually, that kind of environmental angle as well.
Yeah.
So if we're satisfied that there is a solution there, we'll then move forward. But I think being quite agile and responsive is really important in this space with things moving so quickly.
Nice.
At CUPA, I am not an assessment expert. This is my confession for today. I am actually an engineering manager and an engineering lead. That is what I do. And AI, as exciting as it is just software. It is just software. And so I've been using in my work the same approach that I have been using in the 15 years of experience that I have managing engineering, which is, let's talk about the 4 pillars that help me figure out if this is the right solution or not. First, we never start with, let's use AI. Let's always start with what is the business problem that you are trying to solve.
Yeah.
Once you tell me this, then let's explore what, if any, technologies could solve it. Could be a type of AI, it could be some sort of automation, but it might not be. Let's explore if your problem could be solved by just looking at your workflows properly. by looking at your processes, by doing some business analysis and figuring out if there are cheaper, better, faster, etc. ways of doing the thing that you want without actually spinning out any technology. If we decide that it is technology, then let's also look at the impact that this is going to have on your people, on your workflows, on your processes, on your costs, etc., before you start even, piloting anything. And also, let's not forget that, that everyone's favorite word, governance. There's so many frameworks that you need to be mindful of, not just the regulators in our space, but also ethical considerations, sustainability, of course. Rita could not be more right than she was at the talk this morning. And so once you answer all of those questions in those 4 pillars, then
Maybe consider AI.
consider that AI could be the thing.
Yeah, very good.
Personally, I think that it's a great result when AI is not the answer.
Yeah.
Because that means that you have actually really thought through and that you're not just going for hype.
But in a way, we'll move on to beyond the challenge into the next steps. But one of the things is that the piece of AI is saying that things may be possible with technology. It opens up the conversation in quite a cool way, I always think. It's like, oh, there might be something I don't know. So that's another piece, is if it opens up the question where before you may not have challenged, that's where it can be useful, I think, in some ways. But the next stage, so we framed the challenge. The next thing is, what's the role? And you said it, Rebecca, the role of research and the result, R&D, training, testing, learning. What's the role of that with AI? What role do you think it plays? Do you want to start with Dan? Do you want to start?
Oh,
Or not? Or Matt? Got any?
I think I was going to come at this.
Yep.
It's clearly sort of very important. This particular sort of gradual staged approach
Yep.
to this, right? So from my perspective, so at FAB, we represent a broad range of awarding organisations and obviously operate in a regulated space. And I think when you're looking at AI, solving problems within assessment challenges themselves, I think that thinking about how it fits within that regulated system is really important. Ofcom's innovation service, I think, is a good example of sort of how to use that for sort of upfront, early sort of guidance and insight as well. So, I think it's clearly got an important role. I think being really clear about what your business need is, what you're trying to solve, and how you're going to monitor that and what evidence you're going to use.
And with the iteration, what we're doing is trying to make it fair, trying to make it work within the framework, right? That's the point of it. So you may have to trial, or you may have to see in fact if there's any way it will work in the situation. Any other thoughts? Because R&D,
I mean, fundamentally, as assessment organisations, people have to have trust in what we produce. Right. And the use of research and R&D and going through the process so that, first of all, we can honestly say we know it works, rather than we think it might work, and then start being able to give that confidence to young people, to parents, to other stakeholders. Within the education space, you've got to bear in mind these are young people's lives often that is happening here, and why it may just be one session for us, it's their session, so we can't jump into stuff without having the evidence to go with it.
Right.
I also know that assessment, there's a lot of maths and a lot of science-based assessment, but also there's some really interesting human beings in that mix, and things don't always work exactly the same way, the way you might intend. So the number of times we've done trials, not particularly AI trials, but trials and experiments in general, and found something unexpected that we didn't see, that's why we have to be very ethical and very confident before we let these new approaches loose and determine people's futures.
So it's building up trust. So the R&D is trial, understand, and then if it's working, great. But if it isn't, go, learn from it.
Learn from it, understand from it, iterate, make it better next time.
Has anybody got examples where this has worked, in perhaps small scale examples at all?
I mean, we're working on a few different things at the moment. And just to add to what Matt was saying, actually, I think one thing we need to bear in mind as well. So Really nice bit of research from Lena Gray and Joanne Baird about trust in assessment, and they talk about how trust is contextual. So while we're excited and also a little bit scared about the opportunities and challenges of AI, so are our stakeholders, so are our learners, so are the parents. So it's about finding solutions that actually help to mitigate those concerns, as well as things that we know are accurate. I think in terms of testing and trialling that we've done internally, we're doing loads of work around AI and item writing, as I'm sure everyone in the room is at the moment. So we've done work which is giving us really positive results around multiple choice items, for example. So we feel quite confident we've nailed that. We can go on to do some piloting. Some other types of items, so more like open items, things like scenarios. A little bit more challenging, where we're feeling less confident in the outcomes we've got from our trial activities, so we're doing more research on those. So I think certainly our organisation, it sounds like other organisations across the board, we're iterating and doing tests and trials to work out what to take further next, and where we do need to kind of spend a little bit more time reflecting on whether it's the right solution for us.
And anyone gone from that trial to full scale? Anything starting to mature or not? Still early days? Still early days,
We've got some piloting activity planned around, but in the formative assessment side of things. So nothing that high stakes. We want to build the evidence base before we do that. And Dan mentioned Ofqual's innovation service, so that's a platform that we've been in dialogue with, just to keep them updated with what we're doing, keep talking about what our tests and trials are finding, and just make sure we've got enough evidence to move on to the next step if that's the way we want to go.
Well,
Lucy,
R&D is essential. Really, my background before coming to CUPA was in technology research and development, and so I don't really understand a world where that is not the start and where things keep coming back to. We learn a lot from each other at CUPA, so we have a whole product group dedicated to testing and assessment and assessing English skills, and they have been using different flavors of automarking for many years, and now we're learning from that to transplant it, transmute it in a way, and use it in other types of assessments that are not necessarily skills-based. And that whole process is very iterative. It's very much testing an approach, seeing what happens. I always want to make sure that if anyone comes and asks, how does this work? How did you make this happen? Why? That I can answer all of those questions before it goes out.
Qualify first.
Qualify to the public. And a really simple example that I thought was really interesting is we are in English assessment, we have to assess the ability to speak English, right? And to do that in an automated way, you need to transcribe what a person has said so that a version of AI can assess that. And that transcription can be done in different ways. If you use a commercial transcriber, a commercial model that does speech to text, we have found that in some instances it will correct the English and it will correct the grammar on the way of transcription. And that invalidates that use for what we are trying to do. We don't want to correct the student before we mark it. So we cannot use that type of generic commercial models. We have to create our own. And that I'm much happier with. When we create our own stuff through a constant research and development process, then we can vouch for it. And that's where the trust comes. When I can explain to you how we built it, what data we used, how it wasn't biased because we did X, Y, and Z, then trust comes from there, from the ability of explaining what we did and why we did it.
Very good, very good. So let's look to the future, looking ahead. What's the potential? Let's go into the heights. What is the potential? And let's go 5 years, right? Where do we think AI can help us in the future? Thoughts?
Where it can help us is going to be in assessing things we can't assess now.
As you said,
It's going to absolutely be us being able to broaden our minds to how do we get to those things that are really important, that particularly in a paper exam or a non-interactive exam, we can't manage. In the vocational space, you'd be much more creative than we have in the sort of more academic space on sort of models and simulations and stuff, but we can do so much more to make it an authentic assessment experience. So that, I think, is the key thing. Let's actually make our assessments like the way the students will use these skills in the future.
So more inputs, video, for example, as an input.
More input, but
Sound.
also more interaction as well. Videos, we can stick that in the digital exam now.
But live,
but
maybe.
a live interaction where we can engage with people, where things change as they act. That's where we can make a really more meaningful assessments.
And potentially give immediate feedback at the same time.
Well, you've got the immediate feedback at the same time, and then you've got all the benefits of AI marking to speed up that marking process.
So
again, I get a lot of schools being very upset if we remark in less than a day. They say, well, you didn't look at it properly.
Right.
We had somebody waiting and they went. So I think there's also a little bit of confidence about
and
having a delay in the system to give people
and the
confidence.
And the peer checking as well.
And the peer checking.
So making sure that's in there at the same time. Very good. That's one. Anyone else thoughts of the future potential?
I think that the potential around sort of assessing skills that are difficult to assess in sort of
today,
current climate. So I think that's really interesting. I mentioned the awarding body that's using sort of AI learners to train their assessors. Actually, you could apply that for a learner and having sort of assessment of that learner interacting with people in sort of a realistic work environment as well. But then I think along with that, there's obviously going to become the sort of challenge about sort of assessing use of AI as well, and sort of how you deal with that and how jobs sort of change over the next 5 years. So I think realistically it's hard to envisage that many jobs that aren't going to change in some way over the next 5 to 10 years. And so, however you use AI to sort of improve that learner experience needs to take account of sort of what the expectations can be there.
What the purpose of the education and learning is for is to, it's going to feed in.
Yeah, I'd like to see a sort of mainstreaming of some of the more interesting and innovative technologies we're seeing at the moment. So we have this thing called the Assessment Innovation Fund, and we give grants to edtech companies and other organisations that are developing interesting projects. We just had one that's concluded with virtual simulations for healthcare learners with adaptive learning and teaching. They go in, it's quite disconcerting. I was watching the video the other day of this like groaning man in bed. It's very, very, very odd. But it's giving that learner the opportunity to test, trial, develop their skills in a kind of a realistic-ish environment. I think in 5 years it'll be very realistic. And some of these are really high-stakes skills that we're testing. You don't want to send a young learner who's at the beginning of their journey in healthcare into an interaction with a real patient. So I actually think in the vocational space, there's a lot of interesting opportunities for developing skills that are, there's a safety issue perhaps, or there's perhaps
simulations. Yeah.
Exactly, like a technology access issue that would inhibit the learner from practicing that skill regularly. So that I'm really excited about that. And the feedback for that particular trial showed that about 60% of the learners involved found it more engaging than the traditional, training that they experienced today. So loads of potential around that.
Yeah. And of course, one of the big things is reflective frameworks, right? Exactly. So it builds straight into that. Lucy?
Well, I'm very skeptical of this whole thing, I have to say. I think a lot of it is hype, and I think that we often assume that all tech is good and that tech will just continue to improve and that progress is inevitable. And I don't believe any of those things. So I'm extremely skeptical about what's happening, and because of that, I am very cautious in my thinking of what's going to happen in 5 years. One opportunity that I do believe is there is scale. When I learned English, nobody's shocked right now that I'm not a native English speaker, right? When I learned English, it changed my life. It made it possible for me to study in another country, this one. It made it possible for me to have a life here, and it has completely changed my life. I want that opportunity to be available for many more people. And I think that technology does open the ability of scaling things and giving more and more people the ability of learn new things, of proving those skills so that they can then have access to other opportunities. So that's possibly not necessarily to do with AI. It might just need to be a case of, more hardware, more connectivity, more opportunities for people to really live up to their potential. Is that going to be given to us by OpenAI and other companies owning privately the knowledge of the universe? No. But it is possible that education will become more accessible, and that people will be able to just do more in more places with fewer barriers. And I do think that is a real opportunity.
And there you've touched on what impact will AI have on the teaching profession, which is a massively exciting and challenging area as well, because you're absolutely right. How can we make sure that AI supports teaching, not replacing teaching? And I'm a little bit worried at the moment that some of the sort of push to all marking is done by AI loses something from that student-teacher relationship. Some stuff, yes, I hated marking on a Sunday afternoon, but also I know that sometimes reading some of those longer pieces gave me more insight into that student and how to support their learning than I did from an hour's class with another 33 of them all jockeying for attention. So there's a good debate to be having how we use AI in
teaching as well.
Teaching as well as assessment, and the two are
two go together, don't they?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Just look at we've talked about trust, and I think that's come out as a big theme. But let's look at how can organisations balance the innovation with risk management, regulation, safeguarding, trust, all of these things together. How can it balance this? Any thoughts? Do you want to go first, Lisa? You're itching to, aren't you? Because you were starting there.
Very difficult question. I think, we have to put people first. Like, this needs to be about making things better for people on all dimensions. For students, for people to have more opportunities, for teachers to be able to enjoy their jobs rather than have to slog through paperwork. For just people need to be first. And so that's kind of like the measure that I think we should be using. Are we making things better for people? Are we making sure that things are fair, that things are more accessible? And that should be our guiding star. No, is this cool to do? Is this going to save us money? But, are we making things better? Is the world better because we are using this technology? And I think that should be a good... it's a bit of a cop-out as an answer, though, because I am
Keeping
not
the balance, though.
I'm not actually telling you how to do that. I just think that should be the guiding light. Are we making things better for others and for ourselves?
Okay. And balancing the risk, the innovation, the trust. How are we thinking? Rebecca, do you?
Yeah, I think it's just about good governance, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, it's really challenging, and I think we've seen this with social media and the fact that developed before a really strong governance framework could really develop around it.
Yeah.
So it kind
went
of
too fast, didn't it?
it.
Yep.
And I think we need to be, obviously there's great, the AI Act has just passed in the EU.
Yep.
In organisations, we absolutely need to have AI strategies. We need to make sure that we've got all the guidelines in place, and we don't let people just run with this technology without understanding how it works and building on that evidence base as to what we're doing with it. Is it accurate? The ICO and lots of research talk about the fact that, the information that we train AI on, that AI has been trained on, is inherently biased.
Yeah,
it reflects a certain, proportion of the world that then can create biased outcomes. So it's being aware of all these things and thinking about making sure we've got the right checks and balances in place, and that we're also able to mitigate any challenges that might arise, if we do choose to use it.
A much better answer than mine. Yes, I agree with what she said.
Dan?
I would say, actually, the qualifications regulators in the UK have their positions that they've set out is sort of cautious around adoption and, centering the fact that the importance to keep humans in the loop and all of that. And I think those sorts of regulatory frameworks are important to sort of to manage sort of the safe adoption of this and maintain sort of trust in the qualifications system as well. I think it would be great if, like, from Ofqual's Innovation Service, actually they looked at then sort of starting to publish some findings and some data as well from that to support awarding organisations who are on really different stages. Some organisations looking at much smaller specialist organisations looking at solving really sort of niche problems potentially. But so yeah, I think the regulators have an important role to play there.
Yeah.
If we approach this from the right principle, that we know what the problem we're trying to solve is, and we're using AI for the right reasons, not because it's new and shiny, but because there's a gap we can overcome. I think that's probably the most important part of that balance. I do worry that regulation often is sort of 2 or 3 years or 5 years behind where we are now. So I often find when I'm looking at regulations, and particularly when we think about what we are trying to teach our young people about AI use and maybe in social media groups, that's what they needed to know 2 years ago, not what they need to do now. So because this is evolving, we've all got to take that responsibility to be forward-looking. What are the risks of tomorrow and the day after, not just what are the risks of yesterday? Again, that feeds back into that conversation about the sustainability of AI as much as the other ethical issues. So we have to take responsibility for this. We can't say, we followed regulations, that's good enough.
Very good, very good. Any questions anyone's got for our panel? Yes, please.
Yeah, just to kind of unpick the suggestion around using AI to trial adaptive assessment.
Yeah.
Pick up on a couple of the other themes, like trust. How do you reconcile the vast amount of trialing that would need to happen and the sort of aversion that rewarding bodies have to exposing their content to start with, and ensuring that the AI is representative of the cohorts you want to test the first? How do you balance all of that?
Quality research, I'm afraid, is the simple answer. But you quality research, you put your finger exactly on one of those big challenges that we've got now. A lot of awarding bodies around the world do pre-testing so that they can do some of that. Within the UK, particularly the more traditional AOs are a little bit sort of adverse to pre-testing because they're frightened of things getting out there. But also, can we get better at understanding where modifying a question doesn't change its effectiveness and its validity, which again helps us being able to pre-test that. So, I mean, this is one of the really key issues to get our hands around. But the first challenge is being able to get the insight into the student. And once I've overcome that challenge, potentially with AI, then I think that second challenge in the context we've got is something that we can look at. So, have a proper chat about it later, but you're right, that's going to be fun.
Thank you.
Forgive me, I'm not an educationalist. I just wanted to ask a question. Do you see a point in time, I realise this is a theoretical question, where either exams can be marked almost real time, or you can significantly shorten the enormous time between the exams being set and then the marks being distributed to the students, and imagine the impact that would have on A, cost, and B, on university places being allocated. The whole thing ends up with a real rush at the end, and if you could compress that time to market, then you could give the students a little bit more time and the universities a little bit more time to fill the places.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Very easily.
The second question is when?
When do you think your teachers will be confident if I say this was marked by AI?
I don't know.
And I was having this conversation a little bit earlier. I think that within the next probably year, there'll be enough evidence to say, do you know what? AI is good at marking pretty much all quality assessment types. I think that'll convince me and possibly my panel. I think the slow argument then is how do we convince parents and teachers, which is why I see it as being used as the quality check, human marker, quality check, or the other way around, AI marker, human quality check as the mechanism. And I think that will start to happen within the next 5 years, certainly.
And there's stuff happening immediately as well. So a lot of the time that it takes to go from sitting the assessment through to results release, it's about manual processes. So one issue that we have as a vocational and technical exam board is the upload and download of huge videos of learners doing observations and things like that. It takes so long for the teachers to upload them, for us to download them. Sometimes the videos corrupt, we have to get back to them here and there. Moderation, standardization, even those little tasks that we can speed up through automation or AI, it makes a huge difference. So we're seeing that work happen already, and I think we'll see more and more of it over the next few years.
And do you think that by some exam boards being a little bit slower than others, then that's going to impose more competition between the exam boards to try and lift the whole thing?
Faster results, faster places, you thinking?
It depends, I think, because for general qualifications, JCQ sets the timetable anyway, so it's a collective discussion. I think there's often an idea that exam boards and awarding bodies are adversaries, and I've been chatting away to about 5 different exam boards in the room today who are all good pals of mine from various events and things, and we all work together on these things. So I think it will push people to move more quickly. But I don't know that we'll have that kind of, I guess for some kind of, the short-term health and safety, these sort of do a course in a day and take the exam type qualifications, that would absolutely be a USP in being the quickest. Certainly functional skills is something we see. But I think for general qualifications, it would hopefully be a conversation across the sector.
I think I was going to say a similar thing. I think about apprenticeships, and actually, one of the issues with apprenticeships at the moment is the time between assessment and delivery of results. Sometimes, actually, absolutely, there's a case for sort of speeding that up. But I think, there's obviously more that goes into the sort of timescales around results day for sort of GQs and all of that. And
well, you could shorten the time on remarking as well, and that stop that nightmare of am I, aren't I?
Yeah.
After you're waiting for the remark.
And again, that's the admin element of that, isn't it? When going from that query coming in to the person that can deal with it, to the person who does the marking and back again. So yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions?
Yeah, thanks. First one, I guess, is a point on the on the engineering side, right, and starting with the problem. And this is where I think AI can come in as well. So we often don't really define the problem clearly enough with the BA. We list some symptoms, but then it'll be a case of I've got an itchy arm and the solution is amputation. So there's certainly a use case for AI there, I think. But on the assessment side, are we doing enough picking up the kind of low-hanging fruit, easy stuff, or is there temptation to go straight to the really hard stuff, the kind of end-to-end processes, rather than focusing on things like bias detection, looking at demographic data, making sure you've got standardization, moderation, those sorts of things. I'm sort of thinking, in a previous life, I used to teach maths, and I can remember, a few years back, a really hard paper one that came out, and everyone thought, how on earth did this get through all the kind of checks and balances? You had a really kind of, the grade boundary was really compressed, and then it really disadvantaged students who were maybe a bit slapdash because a couple of marks took them from an A star to a B or something like that.
I was going to say, I think some of that sort of smaller stuff is being picked up. I think it is being addressed. It's just maybe not, talked about. It's not as exciting as some of the sort of bigger pieces. But I think so. Our members range from sort of the large awarding bodies down to really small specialist organisations with 4 people working in them. And so across the range of awarding bodies, people are looking at them, thinking about their specific problems, their specific challenges, and how AI can support with that. Obviously, like capacity to do research and development here is wildly different across these organisations, but I think to a large extent, people are thinking about their individual problems and how they're going to sort of deploy AI to deal with those. Yeah.
I mean, we already do some of the statistical investigations once we have the students' marks. So in your maths paper, we realise that you phrased it A star to C, so I know it's not me, so I can be confident. But it will be known it was a hard paper. What we can do with AI, which we aren't good at the moment, is create those example students and just try out the exams. And that gives us a bit more of that pre-testing element, which is really missing from the UK market for a very sensible reason. The IB doesn't pre-test either. But if we could run some AI examples of how to get the answer, that could flag those things much earlier in the process, so we make the adjustments before, not after, and that would just make a much better experience for the students. So yeah, some good stuff there as well.
Yes, because sometimes you get the sort of the feedback too late, right?
Yes.
And that's so that pre-test idea in a small iterative way, get to a level of confidence and then go, we could get
And
much
again,
more.
it's a different sort of pre-testing to the pre-testing that is used in vocational other parts of the world, yes.
Yeah. And I guess the theme is momentum, right? So if you start with a small, get it right, and then you can get confidence, because there is a big thing, and increasing process times is a big deal. But actually, incremental gains, we talked about that, getting confidence, finding it works, saving time, but also, also making everyone understand what the potential is. Because the thing is, you don't know until you've seen the result, right? You don't know how good it can be. Cool. Any other question? I think we've got time for one more, perhaps.
Yeah. Hi. So my question is really, and we talked about problems to solve, AI can help solve. And from our experience at Cambridge University Press is we've been using AI for automarking for a number of years. One of the reasons we do it and the problems we need to solve is that we've got evidence that it improves the quality and the reliability of marking. Doesn't mean 100% and doesn't mean that humans aren't in the loop, but the reliability and the quality of marking and the efficiencies that we can get from automarking are there.
Right.
One of the big challenges is trust. So my question is, what do you think are ways that we can generate trust in using AI in assessment, especially if we have an ethical framework for AI? How do we kind of convince our customers that actually they can trust it because we are using AI ethically?
Any thoughts? I know we've said make sure the human first. I know we've said that bit, but is there anything about actually trusting the answer itself, even without a human moderating?
So the way we often approach this in the sector is to that formative element first. So we let teachers see how well it works in a safer environment where if they don't like it, they can see that it's not catastrophic. And then we build that up slowly and gradually into the summative space, starting off with saying, hey, look, we're using it as quality checks to your human marking, and here's the evidence behind it. And then finally, once they've gotten used to that, we can do it starting with different methods for checking. So, but I think letting teachers experience it in their own ways, that also students experience it in their own way, so they'll become familiar with it and how it works, and that'll then eventually filter up to the parents. But yeah, that's my suggestion.
So going towards the teaching.
Teachers are our biggest asset for trusting assessment. If they don't trust assessment, nobody else is going to.
Very, very good. Any other thoughts?
I think AI right now is being marketed really aggressively by the companies that are developing LLMs, and we should not be letting them do the dissemination of how this works. In science communication, there's this contrast between the deficit model versus the dialogue model, right? A lot of what's happening right now is that they are treating us like we're dumb, and they're just telling us what it is and how should we be using it and why we need to adopt it and how you don't want to be left behind. I really think that we should be doing a lot more dialogue, right? It is clear that most of us are not experts in how this technology works, but that doesn't mean that we can't understand it or that we can't learn it. And when I understand how a thing works, I'm much more likely to trust it. Mm-hmm. So, meeting people where they are, explaining concepts, dispelling the myth that this is some sort of magical machine that can give you all the answers, just really meeting people where they are. I think teachers are a perfect audience for that, because then they can act as pollinators and replicators of that attitude, and also giving people much more space to question it and to ask, not just ask questions not questioning it, just ask questions, but question it in the sense of saying, you know what, not yet, not ready for this right now, I want to wait, and allowing for that pace to be organized with those that are being affected by the new technologies. I think that we need to start doing a lot more of that, not just sit there and receive it, but actually,
Very good. Very
stand
good.
out.
Engage with it. Okay, I think we're out of time. So just really a few of the themes that I think we picked up. We picked up the classics of don't start with the solution, right? Start with the problem. Understand exactly what problem you're going for. Also, we reflected on the importance of trial and error and iterate. But I think what actually came out a lot was trust. And there is this whole essence of can you trust it? And we all know sometimes computers, cannot be trusted because of the data and because of the way it's processed. But I think the other really interesting one for me was the vision of, well, actually there are gaps, there are things we cannot evaluate today, and the education system's changing, vocational apprenticeships, etc. So I think there's really interesting things about maybe some of the focus should be on the gaps. But thank you very much to our panel. Hope you enjoyed it. And then, excellent. We're done. Thank you.
I want to hear this one.